I got an update, Clavin. You can put in the episode. You guys might notice that me and T-Bird have the exact same glasses, and we both are wearing beanies and have beards. We look like twins now. To be fair, I wanted to get a different pair of glasses so we'd look a little bit more different, but I went in to switch them out, and it was like $500. So I'm sticking with my freebies and
Where do you get your glasses?
Lens Crafters.
Dude, what is this? Fucking 1998? It's called warbyparker.com. These things cost me like $18 for the frames.
Really? These are Tom Fords. These are fancy.
Oh my god! Of course they're Tom Fords.
But they got chewed up by my dog within my first like 3 months of getting them, and they gave me a brand new free pair. So that was cool. And then when I went to go get
your super mellow, chill, well-behaved dog chewed your glasses up. Weird.
Eagle! All right, welcome back to another episode of Mark My Bird, a Snowboard Mad podcast. I am your host, Mark Clavin, along with my co-host.
What's up? I'm T-Bird. Here we are in Portland, Oregon. Pretty crazy. It's nuking snow in Portland right now, but street crews, before you go booking flights, just know that it's going to turn to rain in about 4 hours. Everything's going to ice over. And this entire city will shut down because it has no snowplows and zero snow removal.
Yeah, same with Cleveland. We got a nice little dump of snow, and now it's raining, so everything's frozen up. Can't even open up the windows in your car.
I would say the East Coast has been generally probably better than anywhere else in the country. Like Vermont is going off right now. I was just in New Hampshire, and they got a bunch of snow. There were street crews in like Cincinnati. I heard Baltimore, maybe Boston right now. Like the East Coast is kind of the place because the West Coast is pretty dry until this storm.
Yeah, and me and you were just in the Midwest for that Red Bull Heavy Metal in Minnesota, and besides the snow they brought in, I didn't see anything on the ground there.
Hey, Mark, it was fucking Red Bull Heavy Metal weekend. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, and there's another one coming up in Boston in like 2 weeks on the 22nd. Yep. Oh, 1 week. Next week.
And then who won heavy metal? It was Austin Viz and Veda Hallen.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was dope. That was really dope. My guess going into it, I think I had Austin Viz on the men's side. I thought Iris was going to take it, but like halfway through the event, I was like, damn, Veda came to play. She was not fucking around. She crushed it. Iris
and Egan still showed up pretty heavily. Iris took a few, maybe like second places or something like that. But that was an awesome event. That was my first event I've been to really this season, so that was nice to see.
Here's my thing. Let me just say my thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a thing for a lot of people. This is nothing new. I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but the marble kind of ledge, faux marble ledge feature, super sick feature. Really fucking dope that they built something like that. The minute someone did a backside 720 over it, I was just like, okay, we can throw this section out the window. Like it's called heavy metal. It's not called Red Bull Air Raid. That was my only qualm.
Yeah, but I mean,
I know it's what the people want. I get it. I totally get it. Like the general consumer who was there drinking their, battery energy drinks, wearing their fucking sweatpants. I saw people in sweatpants. It was fucking freezing.
Yeah.
But I understand that's what they want to see, and they come for a show. But, old head purist, I guess you could say, I would rather not see big air tricks in a rail jam.
Well, the second zone was all rails, but it was pretty slow and pretty small. And then the third zone with the huge kink, nobody really even got to the bottom. I mean, maybe like 2 riders got to the bottom the entire time.
I will say the second zone, it was small. Like the rails were small. The kinked rail was awesome. That was a dope feature. It was super cool. But looking at someone like Rob Rothler, who's like one of the best contest rail jam snowboarders on planet Earth, I felt bad for Rob because he's so tall and those rails were teeny tiny and there were so few. The distance between the rails was so small that it was like really hard to link, 2 tricks.
It was one Rob between the distance. It was about 7
literally
feet, probably.
Yeah. I felt bad for Rob. I was like, damn, dude, he's a tall man.
They'll all get another shot though here in Boston. I'm sure a lot of that crew that was there will be there, and totally different setup. Looks like it's going to be right downtown on some stairs. so
So
far
I
with the
saw the
mock-ups.
setup for that. Speaking of Rob, I saw the setup for that. He's my favorite to win in Boston. I think that setup is going to favor him. It's like spread out. It's big. It's kind of his style of snowboarding. I think Rob Roethlisberger is going to fucking shine in Boston.
I'm gonna go with I'm gonna pull out Nate Host. He's a
Oh shit.
solid, yeah, and I got a confirmation that he's going. He wasn't in Minnesota, but he's coming off a little X Games silver. The year before that, he kind of swept a lot of these contests. So I'm gonna put my money on Nate.
And then on the women's side, of course, Veda, Egan, I think, is in the running, and then Iris. Like Iris right now is straight up having her moment. Like X Games, she did well at Red Bull Heavy Metal, filming for the Nitro movie. That girl, she's on fire. While we are kind of in the throes of talking about contest snowboarding, we have a really good guest today. You could say that today's guest is an event in and of itself. And I mean that literally. This man's entire career has been in the snowboard industry. It's focused solely around producing, planning, and executing the biggest snowboard events in the history of our culture. He's originally from Rochester, New York, which is about an hour outside of Buffalo. And this man is a tried and true member of what I think to be the greatest fans in mainstream sports, in American football at least. He's a member of the Bills Mafia. He's been in the snowboard industry for 20 years now, with 17 years of Burton under his belt. He was in charge of the 30th anniversary of the Burton U.S. Open back when it was in Stratton, Vermont, and then he led the migration of that event property from Stratton to Vail, where he oversaw the Open until it came to an end during COVID in 2020. He also spearheaded a Day for Jake in memory of the legendary late, great Jake Burton after his passing, and in his tenure, he's run events all over the world, including Burton Rail Days in Tokyo, Japan, Burton High Fives in New Zealand, the Canadian Open in Calgary, as well as countless demos, movie premiere tours, and grassroots and amateur snowboard events. Recently, though, he's lit the snowboard world on fire by partnering up with Shaun White to launch professional snowboarding's first ever league, which is aptly titled the Snow League. Mark, audience, please welcome our good friend and our guest today, Mr. Ian Warda.
Hey,
There he is. What's up, buddy?
What's up, boys?
How are you, my man?
I'm great.
Wonderful. Where are you right now?
I'm in Vermont.
We just did the intro, and we always do like a little bit of an update. It's actually snowing in Portland, Oregon right now.
Sick.
But we were talking about how I think New England is probably the best place to go snowboarding in the entire country right now.
Don't tell anyone, please.
Okay. Nobody heard that. Don't worry about it.
It's not nuking outside of my window, I promise.
Dude, that's awesome, man. That's rad. Have you been out, gotten some turns recently?
A little bit less than I'd like, but
Yeah.
par for the course here. Working hard this winter, but yeah, it's I've got a little spot up on a small mountain, Bolton Valley, just outside of Burlington. It's like the closest one to town here, and we're like right at the top, almost kind of ski in, ski out. So been getting it when it's good, and yeah, we've got like a 2-foot storm coming on Sunday.
are you from Vermont originally?
No, I grew up in Rochester, New York, but I've been here 25 years now at this point. So Vermont's home. Kind of bounced around a little bit, but yeah, been in Vermont for a long time.
Well, before we get into leagues in the snowboard space, I do want to offer my condolences to you regarding the National Football League, Buffalo Bills. Dude,
Get it?
I'm a Patriots fan, you know that,
Yeah.
but I was rooting for Bills Nation this year. I wanted the Bills to go to the Super Bowl. I thought they were going to do it.
It was. It felt like everyone was behind us. Just sort of everyone against the Chiefs, but can't get over the hump. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
We'll get there eventually. I'm confident in that. I think we have the best player in football. But
I still firmly believe after watching the Super Bowl, I was shocked to see what happened. Complete fucking utter blowout.
Yeah.
I am convinced the Bills would have put up a better effort than the Kansas City Chiefs. I know Ryan Runke is going to hate to hear that, but Runk, I love you, buddy. That's just how I feel.
Runk's been real quiet lately. Real quiet this last week. No, yeah, I mean, yes, I absolutely believe the Bills would have put up a fight there. It's tough, but maybe that's a signal, the way that the Eagles dismantled them. Maybe that's the end of the reign here. Maybe it's our time, and the Chiefs would be stepping off the throne.
Awesome, buddy. Well, hey, I want to get a little bit into the beginnings of your career because so many times we have pro snowboarders in here, right? And we're like, tell us how you came up and how you became pro. How does someone grow up as a snowboarder in Rochester, New York, and get into the snowboard event space? Because it is such a small little niche thing, but it's so integral to the lifeblood of our culture is watching events, attending events, all that stuff. How did that all kind of come about?
Yeah. Well, like we were talking about, been in Vermont now 25 years. I originally came here for school to go to college. So I went to Champlain College. Kind of always wanted to be in the mountains. I grew up in Rochester. I wanted to go to UVM in Burlington, just sort of like here in the mountains. It was close by, staying on the East Coast. And I applied, I got in, and my parents kept telling me like, hey, like, you can't afford UVM, right? It's like really expensive. Like you're paying for school. And it like just as an 18-year-old kid, it didn't quite register.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm going. It's all good. And then like every day kept going by, like graduation is coming. And I'm like, no, I'm going. They're like, okay, with what money sort of thing. So anyway, I ended up having to kind of quickly pivot. I ended up going to school my freshman year at West Virginia University down in Morgantown, which was a blast. And oddly enough, they've got a kind of a cool little snowboarding scene down there.
Yeah, Josh Zirkle, baby.
I'm heading down there tomorrow, so I'll be down there for a snowboarding event. Yeah, right outside at Snowshoe, but close to Morgantown.
Yeah. I mean, when I was there that first semester, we'd go over to Wisp in Maryland and go ride there. And so anyway, it was fun, a little too fun. It was sort of tough to stay focused, like going to a math class with 220 kids in a giant auditorium where they didn't take attendance. So I was like, I think I need something different. And I had kind of heard through some other friends about this smaller school in Burlington, Champlain College, which I never really gave any real look at when I was in high school. And I was like, man, this sounds perfect for me. It just sort of feels more like high school, like small classes, teacher knows your name. So I decided to head up there and, jumped into Burlington, loved it, got a pass at Stowe right away. Been a pass holder there for 25 years now. It's certainly my favorite mountain on the East Coast to ride, especially when it's good and it's dumping. And I ended up getting, they had a lot of really interesting kind of majors there and degrees you could go after. And after kind of trying to figure it out for a little bit, landed on this event management track they had. And I was like, man, bringing people together through these shared experiences and running events was really cool to me. So I did that. And then one day I was going to lunch at like the cafeteria and they had a job fair, and there was this guy, Brad Miner from the HR department at Burton, who was there just like with a table, and they were kind of like, looking for interns for different things. And I started talking to him. He's like, oh, what are you into? What are you doing? What are you studying? And I told him, he's like, we have an events, internship here. And I was like, sounds pretty perfect. Like I'm into that. And it was my senior year, and at Champlain, what they do is they basically like have you working the entire last semester or your last year. You take like 3 credits in a class. Everything else, you're out with a company working. They try to get you set to kind of enter the workforce right away. And so my whole kind of last semester was spent working at Burton in the internship program with the events crew. So he got me this interview. I went in, and Liam Griffin was running the events crew at the time with Carl Harris. Carl ended up leaving, Burton was Kazu's agent for a long time, and, ended up working with Ayumu and kind of all of the Japanese athletes as they were coming up, and still a dear friend of mine. And I remember like interviewing with Liam, and he's, asking me all these questions. And then eventually he's like, all right, I want you to meet Carl. And Carl walked in and looked at me, and he just goes, well, you don't look dumb. Welcome to the team. And I jumped in, and that's where I started. I got, really early on, jumped right into playing a role at the U.S. Open. That was in 2006. That was my first U.S. Open. And just fell in love with that and kept riding that out and just didn't want to leave. So I guess I made a good enough impression that they created a role for me. I jumped in at a really junior level into the events crew at Burton and stuck it out as long as I could. From there, I had ultimately a 17-year long run at Burton. But that's how I got into the snowboarding world, and at this point can't seem to get out.
And then for, some of our audience, it's been almost 5 years since the last U.S. Open, or I guess BGOS event, right? Like, explain to the people who may not know in our audience, like what the Burton Global Open Series was. Because, it's hard to explain, man. That thing was fucking huge.
Yeah.
It was big.
Yeah, I mean, it started, the U.S. Open has kind of always been Burton's flagship event, longest running event in snowboarding. Started back in 82 in southern Vermont, downhill race with a flipped over folding table as a start gate, and Jake's baby. He ran that thing for so long, and there's been all these sort of legendary figures that have taken the reins and run that event. And Burton started doing other events just like it around the world as well. And when we scaled that to a certain point, it really made sense to really kind of join it together as a series that almost operated like this kind of connected platform for the athletes to compete and earn points throughout those events, and ultimately sort of be crowned a champion, at least the BGOS champion. So we had the European Open, which eventually became the Locks Open, the Canadian Open, which ran up in Calgary at COP. We had the Australian Open, the New Zealand Open, had the Nippon Open back in the day at Alt Bondi, I believe, in Japan. So you had these events all over the world, and we kind of stitched them together. We brought in global sponsorship to support, globally across the series. We developed this ridiculous trophy that was like held together by magnets. I forgot how much we spent on it. It was kind of a big deal at the time, and I want to say we were giving out $100,000 to the winner. Basically earning points throughout that series. So that was, I kind of had a moment there where those events were really running strong and connected in that way. And there was still plenty of other large scale events in snowboarding, but Burton really kind of galvanizing those into a series where there was some consistency in how those events were run and the caliber of athlete and competition you'd see.
And the old saying always goes, I mean, I've heard it so many times from people in the event space, it is impossible to plan a perfect event, right? Like shit always goes sideways and you got to improvise and you got to figure it out. What is your like craziest Burton Global Open series story? Like the behind the scenes of like something that went cataclysmically wrong that you had to kind of right the ship and put the contest on no matter what.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't think anything like wild, but I mean, weather,
Yeah.
Mother Nature, we like to call her mom, like she's always playing havoc with us. That's kind of the big one. And I remember my first US Open in Vail, we moved that from the last one in Stratton, which was the 30th anniversary, is the first one I really had taken over fully and run, the last event in Stratton. And then we migrated it to Vail. That first year in Vail, it was this labor of love of just, putting our blood, sweat, and tears into planning that, working on all the kinks in a new location and kind of building that, the whole thing from the ground up and really resetting it. And we got there, and the first event was, women's slopestyle finals. And I remember sitting up at the top with all the athletes, and it was just howling and nuking. And like, we tried everything we could to run that event, and we couldn't. And I took a moment and like walked behind the athletes tent and just had a good cry. Like I couldn't believe that like everything we had done, it's like kind of all for naught. But oddly enough, it's like, those athletes, Spencer and Jamie and all of them that were just like, listen, like this is the right call. And we love that this is how you run these events. You do it with us. Like we're a part of it. You are all snowboarders, you care, you understand. And, we've all talked about all the controversies over the years of other events and how they operate and do things. And, US Open, that was one thing that Jake sort of imparted, to us and all the different people that have been a part of that like this is truly a snowboarders event, and it's, making those decisions in the right way. So yeah, there's been some tough ones. Yeah, always interesting stories, like some gnarly injuries, some calls like that where, you realize the gravity of the situation, what these athletes are doing. I can't really think about too many sports out there where these athletes are truly putting their lives on the line every time they go out and compete. Certainly auto racing and things like that, you understand it. Snowboarding's right up there. And we've seen some of that. I think about Ayumu a lot, and sort of watching him deck out at the US Open in Vail, and had a pretty close call, but the best part of that story is he came back next year and won, and just that battle back. And that's sports to me. I'm such a sports fan, and I consume as much sports as I can get, and those are those stories of sort of triumphs and overcoming adversity and battling through injuries and coming back that so important, I think, to the drama that unfolds in sport in general. And we have that here. And, I think a lot of it gets buried. You don't really see it because that platform's not quite there to showcase it in the same way. And, one of the principles, I think, with the Snow League is to really uncover those stories and bring people in.
Beauty. Well, that's perfect, because that's what I want to kind of transition into next. So what year did you part ways with Burton? When was that?
21. Yeah, I think March of 21. So it's been 4 years now almost.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did the U.S. Open stop because there were so many bowling balls stolen from the bowling party every year in Vail?
You have a bowling ball? Did you steal one?
Uh, I had them. I think I took one every year I was there, but they've never made it back to my house.
So we started
Yeah,
making extra because we're like, you know what? People love stealing these things. Like, let's feed the people what they
Yeah,
want.
what was the budget for bowling balls
Bowling ball
customized?
budget, that's top secret. You're not supposed to get yelled at for disclosing that. Um,
So
yeah,
yeah, after you left Burton, when did the Snow League talk start? When did Shaun start getting in contact with you, or maybe you got in contact with him? Give us that kind of origin story of how this grand idea, became a reality.
yeah. Very recently, in fact, the company was formed in October last year. I want to say. We sorry, October the year prior, and then we launched this last June. So we were out in at Cannes in France, which is the Cannes Lion Creative Festival, sort of like the Grammys or the Emmys or the Oscars for marketing, essentially just creative work and advertising and marketing work. It's kind of this who's who of like all the major brands out there. But there's an activation there called Sport Beach. It all takes place on the French Riviera, and there's all these activations. And Sport Beach is run by this group called Stagwell, one of the biggest sports marketing agencies in the world, and they're bringing in all these incredible athletes and leaders from different sports properties and businesses surrounding sport. And that's where we, chose to launch the league. And I mean, we were making news there, sort of like meeting people from different places, the NFL or big brands like Google and others, and just like, oh, you guys are with the sport, you guys are with the Snow League. This is, we heard about that. Like, what an incredible, sort of development in the sports world. So that happened in June, but prior to all that, it was really around, Christmas time. I guess that would have been 2024, or sorry, 23, December 23. I had been working on something else for a little while with a few friends of mine, and kind of in the action sports space. It was, sort of a business idea that we had to really kind of galvanize the industry and sort of think about content and media, and just starting to really develop that. That was getting really, far along and close to becoming a reality. And that's when I kind of started to connect in with Shaun and his team. And Shaun, I think at the time, had been rethinking Aaron Style, which is a event property that he had acquired a while back. And Aaron Style, much like everything else during COVID, had shuttered, and live events business kind of came screeching to a halt. But he was really interested in reviving that. He had hung it up from a competitive standpoint. And just wanted to stay involved in snowboarding and give back, and had this property, knew there was something there. So he was just starting to talk to people and sort of network around who could help him make that a reality. And so that's where I kind of got connected in, and my idea and the thing I was working on kind of fit fairly well with Aaron's style. And so we were kind of talking a lot about that. But in the end, it was like, hey, let's kind of stay focused in our own areas. And he had some opportunities with that, and so did I. But through this whole thing, he was really talking about something bigger. He was talking about developing this much needed platform for our sport that was much beyond a one-off event like Aaron Style was. It was this concept of a league. It was, our sport needs to be considered in the professional sports world in the same way that these other celebrated sports are. Our athletes deserve it. They need a better platform. They need they need to be shown in a different light. And so that really kind of piqued my interest. So he kind of went away and started working more on that, and ended up reconnecting with someone he had worked with in the past, who's now our CEO at the Snow League, guy named Omar, who he had worked with Shaun at Omar's last company, which he had sold off, and Omar was sort of looking for his next thing. And again, same thing with Omar. He doesn't come traditionally from the live events world, but huge sports fan, loves the space. And when he started hearing Shaun talk about the league, his ears perked up right away. And so he started putting ideas together for Shaun and said, hey, I think I can, not only can I run this, but I think I can help to bring in the capital needed to really launch this thing. And Omar has, incredible experience and connections there. So that's when Shaun and team had let me know that, and I got really interested because those are the areas that I didn't have experience in. And I thought, you need an operator, someone that knows the industry and the business, who's passionate. Omar brought all those other things, and we started talking, and it was, kind of the quickest yes I've ever given in terms of jumping into something. and it was a shared vision of mine. I mean, I sat in seats for so long, kind of in the snowboarding politics world with the old TTR and all the the FIS meetings and that. Being an event organizer with the Burton events, and we had always tried to find ways to join forces and sort of unify to create a more consistent platform for the athletes and make it more commercially viable. But there was always conflicts of one kind or another. Oftentimes around broadcast rights or sponsorship, and a lot of the events back in the day were owned and operated by networks. Dew Tour was run by NBC and X Games was run by ESPN, so it was hard to come together. So I kind of always thought if this thing was ever going to happen, someone would really just have to build it from the ground up, and that's what I heard in Shaun's vision was, I'm ready to move into that role now and bring the pieces together to do that, and I was all in. So that's when it started. Was basically beginning of last year, and we've been cranking ever since.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always known Shaun was going to give back, and he started to toward the end of his career, the twilight of his career. But I kind of always just in my head internally thought to myself, like, once Shaun officially retires and hangs it up, that's when he's going to find like great success in this. It's hard to balance both of those worlds. It's hard to run an event series like Aaron Style while also training for your last Olympics, right?
Yeah, he's talked about that a lot. I mean, it was tough for him to really give it the focus and the energy that it deserved while he was still competing. And I think we all know how demanding that is, and no one takes that more seriously than him. So yeah, as he sort of thought about, call it Shaun 2.0, and what that meant, it came back to snowboarding for him. He really wanted to find all these ways to give back, and you've seen what he's done with with We Are Camp and starting to really inject more energy into that from his perspective. But the league was really the biggest thing. I think
Yeah.
I am very confident that this sort of second chapter of his snowboarding career can leave a much bigger legacy than even his competitive career. I don't know what he would say about that, but I believe this is much bigger. This is something that can last for generations for the sport, and he cares deeply about it. He's really passionate.
I mean, with this new endeavor, Shaun is also, you wouldn't really know it by watching interviews, but knowing what I know about Shaun, he's one of the most competitive people who's ever strapped into a snowboard, right? He wouldn't have found the success he found if he weren't that way. Is he as competitive in the boardroom as he is on a snowboard? Is he really striving for just total dominance and success and accolades?
I mean, dude's got a motor. I mean, he doesn't stop. He's when he gets his mindset on something, he goes after it, and that's what I see from him every day. He's just got this incredible just energy for what this is and what this can become, and wants to contribute in every way possible. So he's connecting us. He's sitting there with us in the design room, just like pushing pixels around and sort of designing stuff with us. He's really thinking about every detail, and he's uniquely positioned to do that from a variety of perspectives. But most importantly, a competitor and an athlete, but now sort of into the business world. He's just got so much more to offer. And yeah, I think he wants it to be a success. Of course, he's not failed at much in his life. I don't believe he's going to fail here either, just because of who he is and how he's wired. But he's I think one of the most incredible champions our sport's ever seen, and I think that's just who he is, and we certainly see it in the business.
Let's get into obviously the big event. The first ever is coming to Aspen, Colorado in not too long now, just about six weeks, give or take.
We're less than that.
Yeah, like 3 weeks.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's 3 weeks. That's right. It's
early
February.
March.
Holy shit. Yeah.
March
early
7th,
March.
correct?
March 7th and 8th in Aspen over at Buttermilk. I think by the time this thing airs, it'll probably be just days away. We've got a countdown clock on our website, which is kind of like my it's like anxiety.
Is it more nerve-wracking to launch like a brand new, obviously, league and event kind of going forward, or ushering in a well-standard one like the Burton Open? I mean, you were in charge of something that was historic and had its lane for a very long time, and now you're bringing something brand new to the field. Like, what's the main differences there?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think, yeah, there's differences, right? There's sort of keeping a legacy alive and doing right by the people that came before you. And the U.S. Open was an institution. It was so meaningful to me. I think so meaningful to so many people in the sport, whether you're a competitor or a fan. Just like the stories we've all heard over the years of just like the trek, the pilgrimage to Stratton, and hanging out in the pit on the top, on the side of the pipe, or watching some of the legendary champions, whether it was, Terrier back in the day, or like my favorite competitor of all time is Cass, like no doubt, and just like watching him do what he did at Stratton. And so yeah, to sort of be handed those reins and that responsibility to do it right. Jake just was an incredible mentor to me and became a dear friend. And like the way he kind of encouraged you to keep it up, like he'd kind of just drop these subtle little things, but like he'd always be like, one of his lines was "Don't fuck it up," and like he'd drop into my office every now and then and be like, "Oh, you haven't fucked up in a while," and it was just like that was like okay, like he loves me, he's got me, he's got my back, but like I got to keep going now. And
Yeah.
so that was a lot. That was high pressure, but there was a lot of groundwork paved, and I learned on that job. I mean, that was where I kind of cut my chops of kind of knowing the right way to operate. And whether it was Jake or people like Greg Johnson and these sort of legendary figures in the sport that I learned from. That was a lot of pressure, but maybe easier. And I think this now I feel more equipped. I know I can do this. I know how to operate it. I know sort of where to bring in those other voices and perspectives to sort of make something new and fresh and needed. But you're building from 0 to 1. We're a startup, and that's this is really the first time I've been in a startup, early stage startup. We're building a business. We're launching a product, which is this experience and this platform through the league. Our product is the events. Our product is our broadcast. Our product is our content and sort of everything that you connect into through the Snow League brand, and doing that from scratch. Having to build a team, concept everything, fundraise, and launch it and execute well is a whole different beast. And so I think harder in a lot of ways, but at least I feel more equipped to do it. But it's interesting to think about the dynamic between the two. I've been incredibly proud of some of the things I've been a part of. Always kind of been a behind the scenes guy, and just humbled to be able to be a part of these bigger things. This one I feel like I've got a good bit of my thumbprint on, but I understand what it means too, and want to do right by snowboarding, to sort of give back in the way that I know Shaun wants to as well.
And for the audience that's getting excited to tune in for that early March event in Aspen, let's talk about it's going to be just half pipe in Aspen. Correct?
Yeah, we're launching with half pipe, snowboarding only. So we've got 36 athletes in the field. It's 36 of the best in the world. We've got 20 men, 16 women. Small new formats, but we're in the pipe. So it's a 2-day event, 2 days of competition. In terms of kind of fans tuning in, we hope people that can get to Aspen or close by can show up. But in terms of watching around the world, we've partnered with NBC. Incredibly excited about that partnership. They've kind of been the home for winter sports for a long, long time. Obviously, the Olympics, and really get it and are supportive. And they were thrilled that we built this. Every 4 years, they've got to do the job of getting an audience sort of understanding the sport and who's who and where are the storylines. And we can sort of tell those stories and build that up every year now for them, and kind of keep that going, keep that fan interest. So it's very, very complimentary sort of partnership there. So Peacock, their digital streaming platform, full live coverage. You can watch every minute of the Snow League action on Peacock all day on Friday and Saturday. We're starting 9:30 a.m. local time in Colorado, so 11:30 here on the East Coast. Both of those days, so you can watch full live coverage on Peacock. And then we're also on the NBC network. So our Aspen event will air on March 29th, 1 p.m. East Coast.
Cool.
I'm so excited about that as well.
And then so they're going to take that broadcast, cut it up into a live show, air it on NBC March 29th.
That's right. Yep, there'll be kind of a recap show on the 29th.
Awesome. And then kind of rules, format, right? We've been hearing some rumors, if you can talk about that.
Yeah, of course. It's Tweaking the formats, I think, really with the aim of more drama, more interest happening throughout. I sort of think about the old, sort of traditional formats where you've got these really large field sizes and everyone kind of drops at once, and you take 2 runs or 3 runs in qualifiers or semifinals, and you might have 60 runs in a row, and you're sort of just, people are getting scores, and those scores are starting to create rankings, but you're kind of like waiting, like, is that the winning run? Well, I know that's, they're at the top of the leaderboard now, but like, who's going to best them, and like, where does that sort of land? And you're not quite sure where the payoff is. So one of the things we wanted to do immediately was in our qualifying round, which is that first day on Friday, we're breaking athletes into heats. So we'll run 4 heats. So on the men's side, that's 4 heats of 5. On the women's side, same thing, 4 heats. It's just, 4 less athletes. So it's 4 heats of 4 each. And you'll compete within your own heat. So you'll take a best of 2 run format in that heat. The top scorer out of that heat automatically punches their ticket to move on to finals day of the next day. So they're already likely in. On the men's side, after those first 2 runs, the bottom 2 scorers automatically eliminated. So they're out. We then run through each heat. And after we've done that for all 4 heats, those middle 2 scores, second and third, get re-racked into another kind of super heat, basically a last chance qualifier. And they do another 2-round format. And the top 4 scores from there join the other 4 that already punched their ticket and move on to the next day to make our field of 8 for finals. So
Nice.
what we like about that is every one of those runs counts. You're sort of watching, these athletes compete against 4 others or 3 others in the case of the women. And so each of those runs, it's easier to follow. Like, okay, I just watched that run, that score. I've only got to sort of compare 2 or 3 others of just like, who are they up against? And so there's these little micro payoffs, these little sort of battles happening throughout where you've got these little wins and losses happening throughout the competition, which just feels more akin to traditional sport, and where you're sort of watching like, did they make the first down or did they not? Did they have to punt or did they get in the end zone and score? And so you can kind of follow how this thing is tracking throughout. And then as we get to finals day, borrowing from what you've seen across sport, widely, and now even in our sport with the national selection, a head-to-head bracket format. So we take our 8, and we're going head-to-head. It's a knockout bracket.
Cool.
Those athletes will be seeded from the day before. So that top finisher from qualifying will be the 1 seed. That bottom finisher will be the 8 seed. You're going to see a 1-8 matchup, a 2-7 matchup, a 3-6, a 4-5. And just like a March Madness bracket, they're going to go head-to-head and start to move through. So that format is a best of 3, basically a best 2 out of 3. So you'll take a run. The next athlete to take a run, whoever got the better score, they'll earn a point. They'll basically win that one. And then they'll drop in for their second run. If the same athlete wins, they've now swept their 2, they move on. If not, and the other athlete wins, we go to a third run to decide that. And another little unique wrinkle there is we're actually requiring athletes in their first 2 runs to drop in from both walls. So if you dropped in on the rider's left wall that first run, your next run you have to drop in from the right wall. And
Nice.
that's doing a few things. It's definitely promoting variety. There's a lot of athletes out there that have 1 run, and they kind of do that run over and over again. They've got it dialed. This is going to not only force some variety and mixing that up, but also I think some change in strategy of where you're going to see athletes trying to do different runs that can still get them through a round without having to sort of put out their top run and saving that for the later rounds.
Yeah, that was a little bit this year with X Games. I felt that was a little bit of criticism where people were saying, just to get to finals, they did their best run and then they just did it again with the playoff format.
Yeah, variety is big for us, and we really thought long and hard and talked to the athletes. Shaun had a lot of input here on just how do we promote variety? How do we promote more creativity and style even without forcing it? We all talk about that. We all love seeing style in snowboarding, and with what's happening out there with some of the spins these days, like that can work against some of the style we like to see. But instead of saying no spins over a certain, can't spin over 7 or something like that, which can kind of actually have a negative effect, we felt like this was the right move to just sort of force that, especially in pipe, right wall, left wall just completely throws your trick order and your total run, into a different dynamic. So I think we're going to see that variety come out. Athletes are going to have to start developing more tricks and runs and strategically placing them throughout the competition.
Did you guys ever entertain the going through the 5-round gauntlet that the WSL does for their finals day? Like where it's, number one seed is only going to face whoever gets all the way through. And number five, if they have a really good day, they can make it all the way to that gold medal match. But just kind of that,
Yeah.
instead of just going head to head playoff seeding kind of thing like natural selection and obviously what you guys are doing, it does get a lot of flack in WSL. People don't really like that, but at the same time, it's pretty crazy for drama building as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. I mean, we looked at everything. I mean, we looked at like I said, mainstream sports, you think about our heats on that first day, it feels very much like group play in the World Cup in soccer. You've kind of got this interesting analysis that can happen. Like you always talk about the group of death in the World Cup, just like this loaded heat where it's like, man, all those teams, like how are you going to make it out of there? Like there's some of that, and then on the final side with the head to head, you're still running a gauntlet. I mean, you've potentially got to put down 9 runs to get all the way through to finals. If you went to a third run in every round and made it all the way to the finals and won, that might require 9 runs, which in a lot of contests in halfpipe in finals, you might have to do 2. So it's a huge difference now in what these athletes will be forced to think through, strategize, and ultimately put down and execute. So we're excited about the format. We know we'll learn from it too, and
Yeah.
excited for that, what it does to shake things up. But we're already starting to hear from coaches and athletes like wrapping their heads around what this means as they enter competition.
It kind of reminds me a little bit too of the NBA play-in, right?
Yeah,
I think the play-in is like one of the most exciting things in mainstream sports, right? As an NBA fan, I almost can't wait for the play-in. It's like the playoffs before the playoffs even begin. It just adds that extra layer of excitement. And then, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago in the NBA, the Indiana Pacers like made it through the play-in and made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like if a rider gets on a roll in that, kind of second round of qualification, they take that momentum into finals day, even as like the 8 seed or the 7 seed, they could take anyone down, especially with the double wall drop format.
yeah, exactly. And I think you may be an athlete that's traditionally been on top, but you've kind of got one run. When you have to have 2, basically by dropping right and left, that might all of a sudden take some some lesser known names that haven't really been on that podium all that much, and all of a sudden they have an advantage because they have more variety or a
Yeah.
different way of attacking the pipe. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how this shakes up the traditional leaderboards and who we see on podiums and who's really out there, with a shot to win. And I do think this format lends well to those Cinderellas sort of coming out of nowhere and making some waves, because it's kind of anyone's ball game in a best of a head to head where you just have to go up against one competitor. We all know half pipe, you don't land every run, so pressure's really on too if you don't, and you've got to get through that round. I think I love March Madness. That's one of my favorite things to follow, and you always get those Cinderella stories and those incredible kind of underdog runs, and I'll be shocked if we don't see a little bit of that early on here.
I mean, dude, the name I can't get out of my head right now is Danny Davis. Like this format would just lend so perfectly to the way that dude rides. You never knew what wall he was going to drop in. He could drop in switch. Sometimes he would just take like a fun run in finals and score like a 87,
Yeah.
like riders like that, the really creative, ingenuitive riders it's really gonna play to their benefit, which I think will be super fun to watch for a mainstream audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys have obviously Kaishu, Ayumu. It looks like Maddie and Gaun Choi on the female side. Is there a reason we haven't seen Scotty or Chloe in the lineup?
I think Chloe is really focused on the Olympics. I think she's got a very specific schedule and regimen sort of in mind. I think she's been training quite a bit. I believe she's been up at Locks. So yeah, I think we'd love to see them compete in the league, and I think over time, you never know. But yeah, I think we've got such an incredible field, and I think what I like about our setup as well is these are the same athletes that'll be in the league. We have promotion and relegation, that'll happen at the end of season 1. Your Snow League World Championship standings carry from event 1 to event 2, 3, and 4. That leaderboard is always shaking up. You're ultimately vying for championship at the end. And the idea is you'll be able to follow these athletes throughout their careers in one consistent league. So just like, T-Bird follows the Pats and I follow the Bills. It's like you see those players sort of come and go, but that team is always there, and you can follow those budding careers. And so for us, you mentioned Gowan, like, or Sarah Shimizu, or one of these athletes. Like, these are the ones I'm excited about because they're the next generation up. Like, I can't wait to see Patty, get into this league and sort of make her mark. And so we've got the best of the best for sure. And just excited to see kind of how that unfolds, not only throughout the season, but throughout careers.
And then if you are kind of allowed to get into more specifics down the line, obviously ski is going to be introduced. Any other ski and snowboard events? We talking slopestyle? We talking big air on top of pipe? What are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about our schedule, our full season 1 schedule. So for us, our first season as a league is going to span 2 winters. So we obviously have this first event here in March in Aspen, just a few days away. But our next 3 events, which are all part of our first season, are next winter. So we've got one before the Olympics. So that's going to be over in China. So we're going to be at Genting Secret Garden, where the Olympics were hosted in 22, and many World Cups have happened. Incredibly excited for that one. That's in December, early December. That's March 4th through the 6th.
World record height pipe from Kaishu. Yeah,
that's right. So yeah, great pipe. Ollie over there cuts an incredible pipe. That whole team is incredible to work with. So we're excited. That venue has really kind of come a long way, and easily one of the best out there.
And then real quick, sorry to interrupt. Did you say that'll be December 4, 5, 6?
Yep, December 4, 5, 6. So the event gets a little longer as we introduce free skiing. So China will actually be event number 2 in our first season, but the first event that we introduce free skiing. So half pipe only still, but we'll bring skiers into the pipe. And excited to kind of announce that roster of skiing athletes. That's not yet been announced, but we'll have the best of the best as well there. Then the Olympics happen, so we take a bit of a break, and obviously the whole kind of snowboarding world shifts focus there. The athletes are training and finishing qualifying, and then ultimately competing in the games. So post-Olympics, we'll run our last 2 events. So we've got Aspen, so back at Buttermilk for the second winter in a row. That's February 26th, 27th, and 28th. And then we close it out at one of my favorite places in the world, Laux in Switzerland. That's March 19th through the 21st. That's where we'll crown our first ever Snow League World Champion. That'll be snowboarding and free skiing in the pipe. So we've got an incredible lineup of 4 events this first season that we're really excited for. And then beyond that, sky's the limit. We're excited to keep scaling and adding more events in more places, but starting to think about the other disciplines. I get text all the time from the slopestyle athletes, just like, when do we get into the Snow League? And so we're working on a bunch of plans there. We're, trying to think about that one in creative ways as well, to really bring something fresh and needed, and something that the fans, I think, will really engage with. But definitely widening the net.
That's incredible. And for those people who are retaining all of that information, the Snow League, March 7th and 8th, live on Peacock. March 29th will be the airing of the show on NBC. And I heard you got a pretty good broadcast team, Ian.
Can't wait to see you on the mic, T-Bird. We're excited.
It's going to be fun, man. I've been doing my homework, actually. I haven't called a pipe event in a long time, so I've been watching a lot of half pipe these days, because the game has changed. It is a whole different world out there these days, and what these riders can do, it's just not only death-defying, it's ridiculously incredible. It's unreal.
Yeah.
You guys gonna have AI judging?
No.
Yeah. Good.
No, they're going to have Allen Iverson judging.
That's right.
The true AI, the only AI we want to hear from.
The answer, the truth. What's his name?
He'd be a pretty good style judge. Has nothing to do with any of the air, the height, the trick, or anything. Just as they drop in, does they have a good style or no?
Yeah,
it might work.
Now, I'll give you a little sneak peek. You mentioned the broadcast, you mentioned judging. Again, we try to think about the casual sports fan. The Olympics still is the end all be all for viewership when it comes to snowboarding. We know, especially here in the U.S., men's snowboard halfpipe is the most watched event in the Olympic Games. They get something like 12 million viewers tuning in to NBC to watch that. So we know there's tremendous interest. You've got these stars like Shaun and others that, someone like Ayumu, like, guy can't walk down the street in Tokyo without being mobbed. He's a superstar there. So you have these stars, you have this interest every 4 years. You want to capture that all the time, and sort of have that be always on, year in, year out, being able to follow these follow these athletes within a sport in a consistent league where you know where to tune in, you know how to follow it, you can kind of have your favorite athlete and follow their career. And so a lot of the ways we want to do this is just make it more familiar. So a lot of the formats we talked about feel a bit more familiar to a casual sports fan, and this sort of elusive, sort of trying to understand our sport has been tricky. It's highly technical. That casual fan can't always understand the difference between this trick or that trick. And so not dumbing it down, but just putting it into terms that are relatable. And, so we just look at what other sports are doing, whether it be in their presentations and broadcast or just the way they operate. This phenomenon in the NFL now in football, you've got these officiating analysts that come in. So former head of officiating or former referees that come in, and when there's a controversial call or they're reviewing a play, they come and they help break it down. What's the rule book say, and what am I supposed to think about this? They might give an opinion and differ from the ref. So we've got Connor Manning coming in, who many people might know. He's a longtime snowboarder. He's a judge. He's head judged many events. Connor's the guy, but he's also done announcing. So we're bringing him into the broadcast crew along with you, T-Bird, and others, and we're going to throw to him to sort of help the audience understand what they're looking at. Like, what are the judges thinking about? Being able to put himself as a judge himself, in that room. What are they debating? How are they thinking about the criteria, and helping to better break down what you're even looking at? So some of those things, I think, are ways that we're legitimizing the sport at the same way as making it more approachable and accessible, which is really what we believe is the sweet spot to growing it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, because as a broadcaster, it's a tough position to be in when maybe as a broadcaster you assume someone's going to get a score in the low 90s, right, which is a high score for a snowboard event. Then maybe it comes in and it's 79.85, and you're, as a broadcaster, not a judge, you're kind of at a loss for words. You're like, well, I called that one wrong, not quite sure what the judges were thinking there. I've always said having someone that can come in and, like a Gene Steratore in the NFL, I love that shit. When a flag gets thrown and the audience is like, what the hell, that's bullshit. That guy comes in and he's like, here's why the flag was thrown. Look at his hand, right? He's obviously holding right there. That's offensive pass interference. It was the right call. And sometimes that ref comes in and backs up the audience and says, I wouldn't have called that. That's not the call I would have made. So you almost feel like a relief as a consumer of that sport. You're like, okay, I wasn't wrong. I'm not crazy. So,
yeah. And it's water cooler fodder at that point. You can kind of talk about that. Like, okay, that call was tough, and we've all done it. I mean, all the podcasts out there after a controversial call you may see in an event, you're talking about it. This just gives that sort of other sort of expert sort of viewpoint on it, but still subjective, that you have more now to sort of go off of. And to your point, T-Bird, like as an announcer yourself, to not have to do all of it. You kind of have that partner to help, explain it to the audience for you. And we think that just starts to break down barriers that I think are really important. Our sport has such potential to grow. Even the idea of thinking of snowboarding as a sport, that's kind of been at the core of all of this for me. Snowboarding is so much to so many people. I love chasing snow and riding POW more than anything in the whole world. But at the same time, snowboarding is also a sport to me. And I think in a lot of ways it hasn't been seen as that for a long, long time. We haven't had a platform like this. There's been incredible events, whether it's the U.S. Open and others or the X Games. A lot of them are more these one-off showcases of what is happening, but there isn't that sort of athletic connection. There isn't, this sort of drama unfolding and storylines on and off the mountain and sort of in the field of play, and, sort of watching the rivalries bud, and the protagonists and the antagonists in the sport. Think about any sport, there's some like hated characters that are out there that you kind of like, you either root against. And so just even positioning it in that same way is just a different way of thinking about it. And it doesn't take away any of the other, beautiful parts of snowboarding. But there's a sport there too. And I think that's what we're starting to see a whole lot of interest in from a much wider group. And that's the opportunity we're going after.
Incredible.
We can cut this, but I guess, is there going to be a difference for the riders riding at the event? Obviously, there's a head-to-head, so there's a little bit of a format change there. But is there anything that entices the riders to join the league as like a salary that we've heard that might be coming out from other events that are starting soon?
Yeah, so we're really proud of our prize purse. You can kind of look at it a few different ways, but in the end, it really is the richest prize purse in the sport. So our first season, those first 4 events, we're handing out $1.6 million, and that's just for men's and women's snowboard half pipe. When we add free skiing, that will be additional prize money that will come in for that. So that's 370,000 per event. 160,000 at the end of the season for a world champion. That's 80,000 to the men, 80,000 to the women. That's big for me. I think the idea and for us, to pay out equal prize money for a championship, you don't see that in many sports. The NBA compared to the WNBA, those athletes are not earning the same. Women's sports, is growing, and I believe snowboarding has been one of the strongest women's sports for a long, long time, and really hasn't gotten the shine that it deserves. With some of these athletes, some of the biggest stars in our sports, winter sports in general, snowboarding or skiing, people like Michaela Schifrin and Eileen Gu and Lindsey Vonn, or Chloe, Kelly Clark and others. Like we've been very, very strong on that side, and we want to recognize that. Our finals day in Aspen is International Women's Day. We'll certainly be celebrating that side, but that prize money too, I think, is incredibly important. But those stakes that the athletes are competing for been completely elevated from what they're used to, and in a lot of ways we now think they can earn a living competing and being good at what they do, which is snowboarding, and not having to prioritize endorsement deals and things like that.
If they win, correct? This is all still, though, it's in that classic sense of like, you show up, you compete, and if you end up on that podium, that's when you're going to get paid. If you do not end up on that podium, it's not like you do have the option for a living wage kind of thing, correct?
A big chunk of that prize purse is guaranteed appearance fees to the athletes. So
Oh, wow.
every athlete competes.
Yes.
Every
That's
athlete
amazing.
competes gets $5,000 per event. So those 4 events, that's $20,000 right there. And again, that's a big difference from what they're used to.
Oh yeah.
That's huge. That's what I was that's what I was wondering. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
really nice.
And then that upside potential of prize winnings. Our first place prize is 50,000 per event. And then again, you have enough podiums, you're right in the running there for that Snow League World Championship at the end. And we pay down 1 through 3 on that side as well for men's and women's.
Cool.
Incredible. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
That's awesome.
My final and I believe most important and pressing question is, as a member of Bill's Mafia, will you culminate the first stop of Snow League by jumping through a table?
I'm still in mourning, dude.
Have you ever gone through a table?
No table jumping.
So the parking lot that I tailgate in Buffalo does not allow table slamming. We do not allow dizzy bats. We do not allow funneling. We do not allow table slamming. So I have not. I have witnessed many a Bill's Mafia member jump through a table. I've got plenty of content of it. Not myself. I don't know that I'm gonna jump through a table to commemorate our first Snow League event, but when we win a Super Bowl, I'll jump through a table.
That sounds good.
Bird, he's a behind the scenes guy. He's going to convince you to jump through the table, and he's going to grab it all on his phone.
That is true. It's content is king. I'll do what's necessary.
The people love a good flaming table.
Well, Ian, thank you so much, man. An hour of your time. I know you're a really busy dude with the event coming up in just about 3 weeks. We're excited to see what happens. I can't wait to get to Aspen and kind of really get my hands dirty with the squad and really dig into this thing and show the world what these athletes and what these people behind the scenes are going to put forward for them.
Yeah,
I'm going to make sure I re-up my subscription to Peacock so I can watch it on Peacock. So.
Definitely do that. It'll be a good show. Bird will be in the booth along with a whole host of good friends and just passionate people that are ready to sort of change the game and how we present the sport. So I'm excited for it all too. Can't wait to see you guys, and thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you very much. We'll see you soon.
All right, thanks.
All right, thanks, Ian.
See you guys.
Dude, I'm kind of nervous now. This just got pretty real. It's gonna be fun to be in that booth and watch and be a part of the first ever Snow League event. It's gonna be awesome.
Who do you think is going to take the top spot?
Mark, you know I can't do that as a broadcaster. Come on, man, that's unfair. But I mean, Ayumu obviously is probably everyone's first pick. I think he's probably the favorite heading into the event. What about you? What about on the women's side with the roster you've seen? Who do you think stands a good chance?
When Chloe's not there, Maddie always is right up there if she can land her run. Gaun Choi, if I'm pronouncing her name right, she's definitely one to watch.
But now it's not just about one run. You know
That
what
is-
I mean?
that is true.
You got to drop from both walls. So it's going to be. I think it's going to kind of showcase the best. I guess you could say all around half pipe rider on the planet, the most versatile, the one that gives the most variety, blends it with execution, amplitude, all that stuff. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, there are a bunch of names on this list that look like they could take it, especially with a different format. So who knows? Ayumu might not be standing up there at the end. I mean, Valentino's coming in for this one. We'll see. It'll be interesting.
Isn't Valentino injured at the moment though?
I don't know. I haven't
Okay.
seen him in any contest, so maybe you could be right.
I think he got injured at the Locks Open, the extent of which I do not know, nor would I speculate. But I did see that he pulled out of a contest recently due to a little bit of an injury. So
Was he
yeah, we'll
slotted
see.
for X Games or no?
Do not know.
Yeah.
Not quite sure.
Okay. Well, another episode in the books. Thanks for having me.
buddy. Yeah, I'll see you soon. Stay safe back east, and hopefully you guys get hit with some snow. It's still dumping in Portland, so I think I'm gonna go build Louie a little drop-in ramp in the backyard and let her do some snowboarding.
We will see you on TV then for Snow League. Sounds good.
All right, brother. Talk to you soon, Mark.